They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I was still the quiet, obedient daughter who wouldn't challenge them. But what they forgot, what they never really knew, was that I had been preparing for this moment long before they even made their move. I'm Emily Tran. I'm a real estate attorney and the youngest of 3. To my parents, I was always the soft one, the daughter who would cave under pressure. But I learned how to play the long game, and when they tried to sell my childhood home behind my back, they forgot I was the one who wrote the contract. The house wasn't just a building to me, it was the only place I'd ever truly felt like I belonged. Every wall held a memory. I could still picture the pencil marks on the pantry door that tracked my height each year, or the squeaky stair that always gave away our late-night snack missions. But that home also carried scars, a place where I was constantly reminded that I was the least favored, the invisible one among louder siblings. So when my parents called out of the blue and said, "We sold the house," my first instinct was silence. Not shock. Not sadness. Just a still, hot fury. They thought they were being generous. "It's too much house now," Mom had said breezily. "We're retiring. You understand, right?" What she meant was, you don't get a say, but I did have a say. You see, 3 years earlier, after a minor health scare my dad had, they came to me for help. They wanted to transfer the property into a family trust for simplicity and protection. I drafted the paperwork myself, reluctantly, but with foresight. I had added one tiny clause buried within the trust agreement. Any sale of the home required the unanimous consent of all 3 adult children. At the time, they barely read it, just trusted me because I was the lawyer. Whatever you think is best, M. For once, they let me take the lead, and I made sure I built in my power, but they'd forgotten that. Or ignored it. When I got the call from an old real estate contact asking if I was cool with the closing date, I knew they were deep into the sale. The contract had already been signed, the buyers pre-approved, even the inspection done, and yet, no one had asked me. I played it calm. I asked for a copy of the contract to review it on behalf of the family, and the moment I opened it, I saw how confident they were. My parents had signed as trustees, and my 2 brothers had signed consents. But mine? Missing. I emailed the title company that same night. Just 3 lines. "Please be advised that per Section 6(b) of the Tran Family Trust, any conveyance of the property requires the written consent of all 3 children. I have not provided mine. Any attempt to close without such consent would be in violation of the trust and subject to legal challenge." By morning, everything had stopped. The agent called me first, panicked. "Emily, is this serious? Can you actually block the sale?" "Yes," I said calmly. "And I will." What I didn't say was that I wasn't doing this out of pettiness. I wasn't trying to punish my parents for choosing my brothers over me my entire life. I just wasn't going to let them erase me. Again, I remembered how, when we were kids, they made my room into a storage closet the second I left for college, but kept my brother's rooms untouched. I remembered how they gave my middle brother a down payment for his house, but told me I was too independent to need help. I remember the holidays I spent alone because I wasn't nearby enough, even though I lived just 2 hours away. This house was mine too. And for once, I wanted them to feel what it was like to ask me for permission. I didn't respond to my parents' first few calls. I let them stew. Let the reality settle in, but by day 4, my mom called crying. "Why are you doing this to us? To the family?" That was rich. Now it was about family. I told her the truth. "You never asked me. You never even told me. You just assumed I'd be okay with it." She snapped back, "Because it's not about you. We needed to move on." Exactly. It was never about me. And that's why I wasn't going to let this slide. Why Dad eventually tried to play the logic card. "Look, the buyers are offering over asking. We're getting a great deal. This is a good move for everyone. Everyone except the one person you didn't consult." I replied. I could hear him grinding his teeth. "So what do you want? Money?" There it was. The assumption that everything could be bought. That my silence all these years meant I was just waiting for my price. But I didn't want money. I wanted control. I wanted them to acknowledge that they couldn't make decisions and pretend I didn't exist. So I told them, "You can't sell unless I approve it. And I won't unless we talk. All of us." The meeting happened the next weekend. My brothers showed up reluctantly, already annoyed. They saw me as the obstacle, the baby sister messing up their plans. We sat in the family room, our old living room, each in separate corners like opponents. My parents looked older, smaller, even. But I didn't soften. "I'm not blocking the sale," I started. "I'm blocking the way you went about it. You didn't think I mattered. I just want that to be said out loud." No one spoke at first. My eldest brother rolled his eyes. "Come on, Emily. This is petty. You could have just picked up the phone. No, I said firmly. You could have picked up the phone. My mom finally broke the silence. We didn't mean to hurt you. We assumed you'd be fine. You always are. And that's exactly why I'm not letting this go, I said. I laid it out clearly. They could still sell the house, but not without acknowledging the way they'd excluded me. I didn't want an apology, not a performative one. I wanted presence, respect, a seat at the table. Then I made an offer that shocked them. I'd agree to the sale, but only if a portion of the proceeds went into a joint fund for future family decisions, and that I'd have equal say in how that fund was used. For once, they couldn't shut me out. Damn, why brothers balked, of course. Why should you get a vote if you're not putting money in? I smiled. Because you just saw how much power one vote can have. Eventually, they agreed. Not happily, but out of necessity. The buyers had already threatened to walk, and no one wanted a lawsuit. The sale closed 2 weeks later, with my signature, front and center. When the house finally changed hands, I didn't cry. I walked through it one last time, room by room, touching the banister, the chipped kitchen tiles, the back fence where my childhood dog used to bark at squirrels. I said goodbye. Not with sorrow, but with certainty, because I didn't lose the house. I reclaimed my place in it, even in its final chapter. In the months that followed, something shifted in our family. Small, subtle changes. My mom started sending me pictures of her new garden at their condo. My dad began asking my opinion before making big decisions. My brothers didn't warm up instantly, but they stopped treating me like an afterthought. Sometimes people need to be reminded, forcefully, that silence doesn't mean consent. That just because someone has always stepped aside, doesn't mean they'll keep doing it. This wasn't just about real estate. It was about legacy, voice, identity. So no, I didn't stop the sale. I made sure they couldn't ignore me ever again, and that, more than any title deed, is what I'll always own. Owning the house outright changed more than just my financial statement. It changed me. Every wall I painted, every floorboard I refinished, felt like reclaiming a part of myself that had been quiet for far too long. But the story wasn't quite over, not yet, because once word spread through our extended family that I'd stopped the sale and bought out my parents, the phone calls started again. Not angry this time. Curious. Some even admiring. I heard what you did, my Aunt Marie said during a visit. I can't believe you pulled that off. I shrugged, trying to stay humble, but I wasn't immune to the quiet satisfaction. I just read the contract. She laughed. You didn't just read it, you understood it better than anyone. Your grandfather would have been proud. That sentence stuck with me more than I expected. My grandfather. The man who built this place with his own hands, who taught me how to lay bricks and plant bulbs and respect roots, literal and otherwise. He believed in foundations, in permanence. And I realized then that this wasn't just about real estate, this was about legacy, but not everyone saw it that way. 3 weeks after the buyout, my brother Evan called. We hadn't talked much since he moved to Seattle and started his tech startup. Growing up, he was always the favorite, the golden boy, the one my parents bragged about to their friends while I sat quietly with my books. Elise, he said, I heard you blocked the house sale. I didn't block it, I said. I enforced the agreement we all signed. There was a beat of silence, then a chuckle that didn't sit right. You know, Mom and Dad could have used that money for retirement. Was it really worth it? I felt the familiar sting of being questioned, for having boundaries, for asserting myself. But I wasn't the same Elise anymore. I didn't stop them from selling their share. I just stopped them from cutting me out. He exhaled into the phone. You always were the stubborn one. No, I said calmly. I was always the quiet one. You just never noticed when quiet people start paying attention. He didn't say much after that, and that was fine by me. What I didn't expect was what came next, because buying the house unlocked something else I hadn't anticipated: opportunity. After restoring the home's exterior and cleaning out the overgrown garden, I started documenting the process online. Just small things, photos of peeling paint, my weekend attempts at tile work, the occasional before and after of the kitchen backsplash. But my followers grew, then doubled, then tripled. Soon I had strangers messaging me, asking for advice on preserving inherited homes, how to navigate legal hurdles, how to read deed clauses and transfer rights. Apparently, people wanted to hear about contracts when they were tied to real stories. So I leaned into it. I launched a blog, The Quiet Clause, a place where I shared what my parents didn't teach me, what no one teaches you unless you've lived it. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about helping others protect what mattered to them. And then, out of nowhere, I got an email from a producer. She'd stumbled upon my blog, loved the story, wanted to talk about turning it into a short documentary segment for a legal series. on property disputes and family drama. I laughed when I read it. Not because it was funny, but because the version of me from a year ago never would have imagined this. I almost said no. Almost, but then I remembered what it felt like to see that "a for sale" sign on the home where I learned to ride a bike. The ache of being invisible. The insult of being assumed away, and I realized, if telling my story helped one other person reclaim their voice, it was worth it. So I said yes. The documentary aired 6 months later. It wasn't flashy, just a quiet 30-minute segment with drone shots of my property, clips of me repainting shutters, and a voiceover describing how a single clause gave me control over my past and my future. The response was overwhelming. Emails poured in. From women, mostly. Daughters like me, who had been left out of decisions, underestimated, passed over. Women who had homes, land, heirlooms they were being nudged out of with subtle shrugs and "it's not your concern" dismissals. I read every message. One line stuck with me. "Thank you for showing me that quiet doesn't mean powerless." It was that moment I knew the story was bigger than a house. My parents eventually came around. Mom started calling more, sometimes asking about the garden or reminiscing about the wallpaper we tore down when I was 13. Dad mailed me a box of old tools Grandpa used to keep in the shed. Inside was a note in his stiff, familiar handwriting. "You were right to fight for it. I just didn't know you had it in you." I didn't cry when I read it. I smiled, because I did have it in me. I always had, they just never looked close enough to see it. Now, 2 years later, the house is fully mine. Not just legally, but emotionally. It breathes with a new rhythm, one I built with my own hands. And every corner of it reminds me that even in a world that overlooks quiet daughters and underestimates soft voices, there is power in being the one who reads the fine print, especially when the fine print gives you the final say. The epilogue. Sometimes I walk past the old deed, now framed in my hallway, and run my fingers along the clause. The one they missed. The one that changed everything. I don't keep it there to gloat, I keep it to remember, because every story has a turning point. A moment where someone says, "no more," even if it's said without yelling. Mine just happened to be written in ink, nestled between legal terms, and signed without a second glance, but it gave me everything I needed: a voice, a legacy, and my home. Some days, I still find myself walking the perimeter of the property like I used to as a kid, dragging a stick along the fence, breathing in the scent of lilacs my grandfather planted long before I was born. The house isn't perfect. The roof still leaks when it rains hard. The garage door groans like it's complaining about its age. But it's mine, because I fought for it, and more importantly, because I chose not to walk away. It's strange how a structure made of wood and brick can carry so much emotion. How it can hold 1,000 arguments, 1,000,000 laughs, the imprint of every decision made, or avoided, inside its walls. My parents had grown tired of its weight, but for me, it became something else entirely, proof that quiet resolve can move mountains. I didn't just restore a house, I restored value. Not the kind measured in dollars or appraisals, but in presence. In standing my ground. In not letting my silence be mistaken for absence. I've since partnered with a nonprofit that supports women inheriting family property. I help review contracts, share case studies, and host quiet little webinars from my kitchen. Sometimes only 10 people show up, but they show up. And that's enough. Recently, a woman from Vermont messaged me, "I never thought to read the deed. You gave me the courage to ask the right questions. I saved my family's farm because of you." That message hit harder than anything my parents ever said, because in the end, I didn't just keep a house, I built a legacy of my own, and it all started with the clause they never bothered to read, but I did.